Hi guys, this is Katie Beth again, and this is the 5th video in my series of Gimp tutorials. And as I said last video, today we're going to be covering color change. Now, as you can see here, I'm going to be using this photo right here that we have edited in video number 2 and changed the background in video number 3. Now, there are several different reasons that you could want to do color changes. That could be from if you're changing the background like I've done here, then the color that the person is wearing may not go with your new background as well. Or you could just want to change it just because you want a different color photo. So we're going to zoom in as I have done, and we're going to select on our free select tool. And we're going to go ahead and select around her outfit here. Now this free select needs to be done pretty close as you can possibly get to the one, like to the edges, because you don't want a whole lot of spare edges here, because then whenever you change the color it's going to look a little strange. And you can always remember that you can hit shift if you need to add another selection to the one you first did. So I've decided here that we're going to change the color of this entire thing, including the white part. But if you need to skip an area, just simply select around it. You're just going to continue to free select here around the edges. Remember to get as close as possible. Whenever it comes to hair, you're going to want to select as close as you possibly can here to the edges. If you need to, remember you can always control and then scroll in with your mouse wheel to zoom in. And I'm just going to continue to select here around the edges really super fast. Now remember, you're going to need to get really close on this part, as close to the edges as possible. So if you need to, make sure you can do it slowly, because getting closer to the edges is going to be more important than doing it quickly. Especially when you're here around the skin part like I am right now, you're going to want to make sure that you select right on the edge of that purple, or whatever color it is that you're selecting. Because if you get any skin into it, it's going to look strange. And we don't want that. So I'm just going to continue free selecting here until I've gotten all the way around. As you can see right here in this section right here that I'm going to zoom in on, there is some purple that right here in her hair. Now back on the edits and the blurs, that didn't really matter, but on this part it does, because once you change the color, especially if you're changing it drastically to a brand new color, which is what we will be doing today, then it's going to look weird if you miss any of these purple parts. Now remember, if you mess up, you can always Control Z to get back, and just keep hitting that until you get back to the stage that you messed up on, until your mistake is gone. Always remember to hit shift whenever you're selecting a new selection, otherwise it will not select. It will unselect all the selections that you've done before. Now I'm going to go ahead and select her bow here, because since I'm changing the white part, I also need to change the bow, otherwise it's probably going to look a little strange. But if you are skipping a selection, if I were skipping the white and choosing not to change the color of that, then it would be okay to leave the bow alone, because the bow would then, it would still match the area of the jacket. I'm just going to quickly go around here and select my bow. Now remember on this part that speed always comes at a second hand on this part, because you need to make sure you get close. Now if you go a little onto the background, that's okay, but especially in the hair and such as that, you're going to want to get really, really, really close. Since I'm going to deselect this area right here, I need to hit the Control key while I'm first clicking my button, so it will make sure to deselect. And if you need to add the selection, you can then click your Shift key with your first click and it will add the selection. Okay, I believe I have it all selected now, so we're going to go ahead and zoom out to make sure. And no, we don't. See, I've messed up and unselected this, so I can hit Control Z like I just did until I get the part that's selected. And then we're going to go over here. This is the part that I was talking about. Make sure you hit that Shift key. It's really, really easy to forget. As you can see, I've just done it. So you cannot forget that Shift key. It is very, very, very important. And I'm just going to go ahead and select here. Don't worry if you mess up. It's always easy to fix it on this. And you can always, like I said, you can always Control Z and get yourself back to where you need to be. Sometimes the hair is easier to do from a zoomed out position as I've just done, because it is easier to tell which part is hair and which part is clothes. If your color of your outfit and the color of your hair are both dark. Okay, all my areas now selected, so we're going to go ahead and zoom out so you can see it. As you can see, all this area right here of all her clothes have been selected while excluding the hair. So we're going to go into colors and click on colorize. Now colorize is the process that we're going to use to recolor this to pretty much whatever color we want. There's this little bar right here that you can see, and the best way to decide which color you want is to start very, very far on one end and just simply work your way toward the other end until you find the one you're looking for. I'm thinking something like this will work for mine. Now remember, you're looking for the main color you're looking for. The shade doesn't matter because you can fix that. Okay, this next little bar is saturation. If you go all the way over this way, it's going to be gray, black and gray. If you go all the way over this way, it's going to be very, very, very bright. I usually like a mid color around this area, but what you choose is really up to you. Now this is your lightness. As you can see, if we go all the way over to this side, it's going to be solid black, and if we go all the way over to this side, it's going to be solid white. So we're going to want a mid color. And you're just going to kind of have to mess with this to figure out exactly what you want. I'm thinking something like this. We're going to go ahead and hit OK and select none. As you can see, this hair over here is a little messed up, as is this strand right here. So we're going to Control Z back and go ahead and include this hair. In very particular sections such as this does not work in every section, that's why we checked it first by switching the color. But in very particular hair sections, sometimes it's going to be better to go ahead and colorize the hair than it will be to leave it blank. This is very common in strands of hair where there's not a lot of, like, there's strands and then there's a whole bunch of little, well, in this particular case, white spots in between the hair. So we're going to go back into the colorize and go back into the color that I had picked. And go back into this color right here. Okay, and that's the color I'm going to go with. Now we're going to go ahead and select none. But as you can see right over here, that going ahead and doing the hair has a tendency of making it the color that it was, and you really don't want that. So you can always go into your paintbrush. Oh, and if this ever happens where your tool options become separate, you can click on this little button over here and drag it on. It'll happen sometimes if you are not really paying attention where you click. And we're going to go with a 50 opacity and then shrink our brush down. A little bit bigger than that. Maybe a 5. And we're literally going to go over here and go into this hair and go over these strands that are purple a couple of times. Now the reason we use an opacity here is because we don't want it to look paintbrushed. We want it to look as if the hair is natural. Sometimes this is a very difficult process, so it is not uncommon to have to control these several times to be able to get your hair exactly right. Because since you are freehanding it, sometimes this little paintbrush gets out of hand and you end up with weird little streaks. I'm going to go over here and see this area doesn't really need it as much because it seems to be okay. So we're going to go ahead and zoom out and check that. See, as you can see in this little area right here, we now have the dark hair again and it no longer looks purple. Or pink, or however you want to look at that. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is change the eye color. Now in our second video, when we were doing some photo edits, we did enhance the eye color. And the difference between changing the eye color and enhancing the eye color is actually quite simple. In enhancing the eye color, you're going to be going with the color the person already has. So it's not that drastic of a change. You're just enhancing what they've already have, because a lot of the time eye color gets diminished in photographs, especially colors such as blue or green. And as you can see, we selected the eyes just like we did in video 2. Just in case if you don't remember that, you take your circle select tool and you go around the whole circle of the eye, and then you hit Control and you go around the pupil of the eye. Now you're going to hit your free select and control around the outside of the eye here to deselect the parts that are not actually part of the eye. And here we have 2 good eye selects. Once again, we're going to use colorize. Now the problem with going from brown, dark brown like this, to a lighter color is that your dark brown is often going to hide your colors so that they won't show up. So a good way to fix this is to go in here and find you a brown. And then take your paintbrush at opacity 50, just like we used for the hair, and tap on here like this. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it one this way and the other one the other way so you can see what the difference is going to be. So I'm going to quickly unselect this so we can just do this other eye. The other possibility is you can go into hue saturation, which is also under colors, and mess with your lightness and saturation. Just bump up your lightness and hit OK. Okay, now I'm going to go over here and select this other eye once again so that we can now use the colorize option on them, and you can see what the difference between the two methods are. Of course, if you are actually doing a photo edit, you want to use the same method for each eye, because otherwise it's going to look a little strange. On the part that you used your brush for, you really need to make sure that you get every single part of the eye, because since it's so much brighter, it's no longer going to blend into the background. Now we're going to go over here and go back into colorize, and we're going to go with blue eyes, I think. And pick this and go hit select, and then we're going to select none and go ahead and zoom out so you can see the difference. I'm going to use the rectangle select so I can select the area I'm talking about and you can make sure that you see it. Okay, this eye right here that I've selected was done using the paintbrush, then colorize. This is a good idea if you're going from a color such as a dark green or a dark brown, as we have done, to another dark color such as a dark blue like you see here. Now this eye over here that I've now selected was done using the hue saturation method. And as you can see, this allowed us to go from a much darker brown to a much lighter blue. The problem with this one is, I'm going to go ahead and use the zoom mechanism so you can see what the issue is. You see how this color is very matte. Well, this color over here has a lot of different pixels in it. Since we used the hue saturation and we took out a lot of the color and it turned black and gray, then we're going to lose some of our pixel types here. Also with this type, whenever you do this, you're often going to have to go in here with your paintbrush and do a couple dabs to your black part, and then once again go in with your paintbrush and add highlights back in. Now, as you remember, we did the highlights back in video tutorial number 4 because we needed the highlights for lighting effects. This is a different process. Then we're going to go ahead and zoom out right here. As you can see, now you can see the two different eyes. And I'll go over it one more time. This one right here used paintbrush then colorize, and this one right here used the hue saturation then colorize. Both of them are good options. It just really depends on which one you want to use depending on what effect you want. If you're going from a dark color to a light color, then your hue saturation is going to be a better idea. But if you're going from a light color such as a medium to light green or a medium to light blue to either a dark color or another light color, then you can just simply colorize it, and the paintbrush is not necessary. Now the next thing we're going to do is work on the lips. A lot of times in photographs, lips, unless the person is wearing a very bright lipstick, are going to be a little dull. The reason for this is because lip color is very close to skin color whenever you zoom in super close and look at the pixels, which I will do in just 1 second so you can see. So it's often that lip color and skin color get confused by the camera, and they tend to look very similar in photographs, or the lip color is a lot lighter in photographs than it is in real life. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom super close in here so you can see the pixels. As you can see right here in this area, that the pixels between the lip color and the skin color, right on the edges especially, but also going in, are going to be fairly similar. And that's why your lip color is never as bright in photographs as it is in real life. So for lip color, I like to use the hue saturation tool. I'll show you what the colorize tool does really fast. As you can see right here, this is our colorize tool. I think that the effect is a little harsh, but it's really up to you. So I'm going to show you my preferred method, which is hue saturation. Remember, you go into colors to find this. You go into the hue saturation, and you can just mess with the hue ever so slightly. It usually doesn't have to be a whole lot. Sometimes you can even keep the hue and mess with the saturation or lightness. Sometimes if you just bump the saturation up just a little bit, then that's going to help. And as you can see right here, then you're going to get a brighter lip color while still looking natural. This was just by bumping the saturation up on this particular one. But if your lip's color is very pale, or a strange color due to pixelization, then you may want to use the hue as well. Now here we're going to do some teeth whitening. Now teeth whitening is one of the most difficult photo edits to do, simply because people have a tendency of overdoing it. You never want to do too white. It is better to leave a little bit of yellow than it is to go too white. And even if you zoom in on a model's face, if I were to go on here and grab any model off the internet and zoom in on their face, you will see that the pixels in their teeth are never going to be solid white. It's exactly the effect you need to avoid. So I'm going to go ahead and, as you've seen, I've pre-selected all her teeth. And the best way to make sure you get them all is to zoom out and check it that way. As you can see, I have all her teeth. Now we're going to go into your paintbrush, and with this you're going to need around a 10 opacity. So type it in, and you're going to go with very white as you can get. Make sure all these little bars are all the way over as far as they'll go, with the exception of this one that says an S, to make sure it's all the way over to your left. Now remember, you can access your colors at any point by clicking on this little box right here. We're going to take this and you just go over it. See here, this is our original, and then we're going to go over it once with the white. Now we're going to go into hue saturation, and mess with the... Remember, lightness is going to make your teeth darker. Saturation is going to make them gray. You never want to mess with the saturation while you're doing teeth. One of the most unnatural effects you're going to get is to wipe all the saturation out of teeth. Because teeth are supposed to be slightly yellow. It's just a fact of life. We're going to go with around a 10 here. We're going to go select none and zoom out. As you can see, this has whitened her teeth without looking fake. Obviously the photograph looks a little weird because we have two different colored eyes, but I wanted to make sure to be able to show you both of those methods. And that's the end of all the colorizing.